A little more Julio Jones talk and fantasy lessons learned from a draft that we did last year. Some good stuff. Boy, what do you see the first 2 rounds of the Fantasy Football Today draft that we did in 2020? A lot of garbage in there. I'm Adam Azer with Dave Richard and Jamey Eisenberg. Hope you heard the bonus podcast we recorded yesterday afternoon when Julio Jones was traded to the Titans. Jamey, you didn't get a chance to chime in there. So what do you think of the big news?
I mean, it's not a surprise. You know, this was the team I think a lot of people were expecting him to end up with, especially after the video was leaked of him working out with Derrick Henry. So it's a good destination for him from the standpoint of there's a lot of targets available. It's a good situation for Ryan Tannehill. It's a great situation for Calvin Ridley. Doesn't really hurt A.J. Brown too much. And, you know, the biggest loser is obviously Matt Ryan in this whole equation because he loses one of the best receivers in football, despite his advanced age. But, you know, for Julio, it's a spot where he can still be successful. Not one of the elite fantasy receivers anymore, but, you know, still good enough that he can be a starting fantasy option and still be successful with the Titans.
Why is he not an elite wide receiver anymore? Because fantasy wide receiver, because he's
he's 32. He's injury prone. He's on a team that doesn't, you know, have the same type of volume that he had previously. So, you know, they're just, you know, some red flags, but not enough that you're going to say I'm staying away from him. Not enough that, or you should at least, you know, you're not drafted. He wasn't being drafted in the same spots that he was previously. So, you know, he may drop you know, half a round or a round by going to Tennessee, and you know, could probably end up being a little bit of a bargain, you know, in that spot.
Okay, Dave is here as well, and yeah, you know, yesterday when I was talking about the splits for Jones and the Azer stats, whatnot, I know, but eliminating the 2 games that he left early. When Heath was like, well, no, he left a lot of games early. You just eliminated the blah, blah, blah. And I said 2 games where he played 35% or fewer of the snaps. And actually, you look at the snap share of the other games, and he didn't leave early. I mean, maybe he did. He came in and out or something like that. But he's an 80% snap share guy, and he was right around that in 7 of his 9 games. So those were the 7 games I was looking at. And in those 7 games, he was on pace for 1,600 yards. And that has been the point I've been making about Julio Jones. He did not drop off last year. When he was healthy, he was on pace for 1,600 yards.
His yards per game were better than 2019.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if they are where they compare if you kept those 2 games that he left early. They were still better. Yeah, right. That's my point. Right. So when he was healthy, he was incredible. And both of you and Heath have both kind of said, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, I know Jamey just said it, that it's not that bad for A.J. Brown. But
right.
I just have to follow up on that. Why don't you think it's that bad? He is getting now an elite, in my opinion, still elite wide receiver. Maybe he's
I mean, it's bad. I mean, it's not great.
It kills the upside.
Yeah, right. It just,
but it doesn't really.
You know, this was a guy you've heard me say time and again that he's got top 3, maybe number 1 upside. I was drafting him as a top 3 receiver. I dropped him to 10. You know, so you know we're talking about a drop, but it's not. This isn't like crushing for him. I mean, we saw Julio and Calvin Ridley coexist.
I didn't realize you dropped him to 10 because I think Heath was still in like the 6-7 range or something like that. But
I'm still at 7, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I guess my thought would be he'd be closer to 10, but you're not.
No,
as far
because I still think he can get good volume. I don't think he's going to shrivel up to a 4 target per game type of guy. I think this is a signal that Tennessee will throw the ball a little bit more. We talked about this. You don't add Julio Jones and say, okay, we're still going to run the ball, you know, 50% of the time or whatever they did last year. You know, they threw it 143 fewer times than Atlanta did last year, just by comparison's sake. They're going to ramp it up to a degree. I don't think it'll be that much. It might be 500 attempts. Maybe call it 520 because there's 17 games. And that's presuming that Julio stays healthy, and he's been healthy for most of the last 7 years. I think that you can certainly say that A.J. Brown is not going to get double coverage anymore, and he might not be at the end of a target funnel like he would have been if Julio Jones was traded somewhere else. But I would imagine the overwhelming majority of targets in Tennessee are going to go to those 2 wide receivers, neither one of which will constantly see double team coverage. They'll see safeties over the top. This team's going to see a lot of cover 2 and cover 3 moving forward. And that makes things very easy for both receivers, but especially somebody like A.J. Brown, who's so good after the catch, and that just makes his efficiency pop. So I'm totally fine, A, taking him ahead of Julio Jones, and B, still considering him inside of the top 10 as a number 1 fantasy receiver.
Okay. So over the last 3 years, the Titans have averaged 187 fewer passes per season than the Falcons.
187 on a
top 5. Atlanta's been top 5 in pass attempts 3 straight seasons. Tennessee's been bottom 3 straight seasons. But one thing, look, that obviously can change. But one thing that you should know is that in 2019, they threw the same amount of touchdown passes, and in 2020, the Titans actually threw more. So they throw so many fewer times, but Ryan Tannehill threw more touchdown passes than Matt Ryan. So that's good. Dave, I know you wanted to add something. You said before the show you wanted to add something to the discussion we had yesterday.
There's a couple of things. First of all, on-target percentage last year, Ryan Tannehill had a better on-target percentage than Matt Ryan, but it was only by a couple of percentage points, both of them north of 75% on target. That's good. But how about deep passing percentage? I went on Pro Football Focus to look, and kind of a double-edged sword here that jives with everything else that we've been saying. Tannehill's adjusted completion rate, this is when they throw out spikes and throwaway passes and all that stuff, drop passes. His deep ball completion rate when adjusted was 51.3%. That's really good, actually. That's the 7th best mark of all the quarterbacks in the league last year. Matt Ryan was at 47.4%, so a little bit worse. But Matt Ryan threw 78 deep balls, twice as many as Ryan Tannehill did last year. So that's the plus and the minus of it all. Again, I would expect Tennessee to throw more deep balls, but it might be more like 50 over the balance of the year, whereas Atlanta's probably going to throw at least as many as they did last year, I would imagine.
I would say it's less because you're taking the offensive coordinator from the Titans and putting him in Atlanta. So, you're going to have probably a little bit more of a Tennessee type offense in Atlanta. And who knows what Todd Downey's going to do taking over, if he's going to continue to do the same thing that Arthur Smith was doing, or is he going to, put his own influence in there? You hope to see him put his own influence in there just to see what, he can do with a new toy, different personnel, so they're going to run certainly less 2 tight end sets, looking at their tight end personnel. That's something that they do a ton. So, now you have another receiver on the field, which could be Josh Reynolds or, Des Kirkpatrick. We'll see which one of those 2 guys step forward. So I'm expecting the Titans to throw the ball more. Their personnel speaks to that. And one thing that John Robinson said yesterday in addressing the media was that they're not done at the tight end position. And, there's a big name that's going to be available. Do they go out and make a move to get a guy like Zach Ertz? So we'll see when he becomes free and if that's something that he considers, or if they, make a trade again. They're losing capital with the move to get Julio. So, but, the fact that they're still exploring that position tells you that either A, they're not thrilled with Anthony Firkser as their number 1 option, or they're just looking to add depth behind him, knowing that they just lost, Pruitt as well, who signed with the 49ers.
Okay, 2 more quick questions, guys. Ryan Tannehill was QB8 last year, and he was top 12 per game, 10th in 4 point, 11th in 6 point. There's another guy. He just rushed 7 rushing touchdowns last year. Where did that come from?
He's been awesome.
I know. And then
20 fantasy points or more in 21 of 26 games with Tennessee.
Yeah, it's terrific. And then he was QB 10, I believe, after he took over as the starter in 2019. So
he was number 2 down the stretch, remember?
Yeah, I don't know what
behind Lamar Jackson, like the final 6 or 7 games.
Why did I say he was 10? He was 2. He was 2. And right, in his 10 starts. That's what it was. It was 10 starts. I said 10. He was QB 2. So can he be top 8? Yeah, how high do you think you're going to get on Ryan Tannehill in the rankings?
I put him 12 initially. Just following the trade. He was originally 15, and so I just basically swapped him with Ryan. But I could see myself moving ahead of Burrow. I have Burrow right now at 11. I could see myself moving ahead of Rodgers, depending on how that all plays out. That's an easy one. It's going to be hard for him to crack the top 8 for me, at least. But he's right there. He's one of the best values that certainly anybody who has drafted already has gotten, even before the move. And now he's only going to get even better. He's going to obviously get drafted sooner, but still, you like waiting on quarterbacks. This is the perfect guy to target.
He is the absolute number 1 perfect guy to target, and his schedule to begin the season is delightful. I think you can. I've got him ranked as the 2nd or 3rd best schedule to begin the year. We're talking about going up against, I believe it's Arizona that they play in week 1. I was checking to see. I know they've got Seattle and Indianapolis also early on in the year. On the balance of the year, I've got their schedule ranked. This is without week 18 included in there. I've got them middle of the pack. I think we could see a really fast start from everybody involved in the passing game in Tennessee. And then maybe you sell high, maybe even on A.J. Brown.
You should have kept
what they do in the first third.
after Cardinals, Seahawks, Titans, because then it's Jets and
yeah. Jets and Jaguars after that. Yep. I just didn't have it memorized, and I was going to look for it. I know that the early schedule is great. Yeah, right.
Coming up.
I think one of them though might be late, like week 18.
It is. Yeah, week 18.
Yeah,
okay, guys. So the final question is, are you going, and please just be quick on this, are you going to downgrade Derrick Henry thinking he won't get as many carries this year?
No, I actually upgraded him.
Yeah, me too.
I think, you just look at what this offense was looking like prior to this move, and it was, okay, stop A.J. Brown, stop Derrick Henry. Now you have a, borderline Hall of Famer that you have to worry about as well. And, Henry, I mean, I didn't significantly, upgrade him, but I had him 7th in PPR. I put him to 5. I left him alone in non-PPR where he's 3. So, you can make a case that he's 2 if you want to behind McCaffrey, maybe even 1 in non-PPR. He's just proven, and knowing that this offensive line is good, the quarterback is good, the receiving core is now better. He is who he is. If he doesn't get hurt, he's going to be fine. And, I think they were already planning to throw him the ball a little bit more based on some of the things you saw in the offseason work. And so any uptick there is just a bonus.
Who do you like? How our defense is going to stop this offense?
Who do you like to win the division? Tell me that.
The Titans.
I think I might give a nod to the Titans at this point, just because there's no dominant defense in the division.
Well, the Colts are pretty good. Their defense
I don't know.
is obviously the question mark. Can they get to the passer? They really struggled with that last year.
They're trying.
The best thing about this team is, and it's cliche, but they embody their coach. They're physical. They're tough. They punch you in the mouth. They're not afraid of things, and that's I think what Mike Vrabel brings. Any conversation you have with Mike Vrabel, he just, you see his football team resemble the way that he speaks and carries himself. And, they're just one of those teams I think they're going to be, just tough team.
All right. Yeah. Tennessee, they added Bud Dupree. They added Danico Autry and Janoris Jenkins. So they upgraded in free agency over the offseason.
And they drafted a corner.
Caleb Farley.
Oh, yeah. Even better.
Yeah, if the secondary ends up panning out, then they're going to walk away with the division easily. But they also need Bud Dupree to play like he did pre-injury.
I'm a little sleepy because I was up late watching some U.S. soccer last night.
Are you watching the Yankees too?
Not Mayweather Paul?
Let's talk about that. No, I didn't watch Mayweather Paul, but I did watch stupid Yankees. Pathetic team. But also U.S. soccer. Holy cow, what a game. It was on Paramount Plus.
Awesome.
I hope you listen to me. Big win there. But you got to be watching CBS Sports HQ. You got to be watching Paramount Plus. Sign up for Paramount Plus, especially if you're a soccer fan. But you also tomorrow night, Tuesday night, put it on your schedule right now, 7 p.m. Eastern. Join us on YouTube for a live mock draft. So that's again Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's on youtube.com/fantasy football today. Watch our mock draft. Ask us questions throughout. We'll be giving away a year-long subscription to Sportsline during the draft. This is amazing. All right. You get a mock draft, you get to ask us questions, and you can win a year-long subscription to Sportsline. You could be making money on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/fantasy football today. We'll see you there Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. So we're going to review the Fantasy Football Today draft that we did last year. And look, it's one draft, but I try to take some trends that I know were relevant and present in other drafts as well. And just kind of have some fun with it. Lessons learned and whatnot. Dave gave me a cool note before the show. Michael Pittman wasn't the most impactful. He had a couple of weeks or whatever. But Claypool, Brandon Ayuk, those three guys, Pittman, Claypool, Ayuk, they were all dropped by the teams that drafted them.
All picked in round 12 or later, and all dropped by the teams that drafted them. And it's just a reminder that you need to show some patience as long as you can with any rookie that you draft, whether it's a receiver or otherwise. And really, you should extend it to every player you draft.
I talk about it all the time. Receivers, even the best ones, get off to slow start. Rookie receivers, they always get off to slow starts. So
yeah, just look at Jerry Jeudy. It's been a whole year.
Yeah. You just look at Justin Jefferson. Except I think Marquise Brown did not get off to a start.
That's a good one. Did Jefferson end up? You drafted Jefferson in that league? Did you keep him? We're about to find out right now. This is going to be great.
I drafted Jefferson.
You drafted Justin Jefferson. And was he on your roster when the season ended? The answer is no.
Really? I dropped him?
You dropped Justin Jefferson at some point. Let's see when you did. Go ahead and keep going. I'll
all right. Well, first
this will be fun.
No, this is not fun.
Oh, it's gonna be great. Jamey, isn't this great?
Stupid Yankees now have to deal with dropping Justin Jefferson.
Remember how excited you were about Justin Jefferson last year? And then you dropped him.
Look, sometimes you have to make roster decisions, and you see a guy do like nothing in his first 2 weeks, whatever, but try to be patient with rookie wide receivers. Okay, so this was
you dropped them on September 16th. So that was after week 2. You gave him 2 whole weeks.
Who did I pick up?
Peyton Barber. Peyton Barber.
Oh, fantasy football. You are a cruel.
You did drop Peyton Barber to get Wayne Gallman, so.
There you go. All right, well, that's good. And then let's see. So let's see who picked up.
You dropped Wayne Gallman for Cordell Patterson. That was a great move.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. So Jefferson was picked up 14 days later by George Maselli for $17. That was the fab.
Okay, so he stayed out on waivers for a full week.
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Yeah, he was unclaimed the following week, right?
Will you remember this now when you start drafting players in the back half of your leagues this year? Will you promise yourself, okay, I'm going to give these guys at least 3 weeks, unless I'm just decimated by injuries and I got to make a move?
Well, hopefully that's what happened if I was picking up Peyton Barber. Yeah, so this is a guy that through 2 weeks, Justin Jefferson had 6 targets. So I could understand people dropping him. I can understand me dropping him. He had 6 targets and 70 yards. So what are you going to do? And then he goes off for 7 catches, 175 yards, and a touchdown in week 3.
Round 15 pick.
What a great.
Right after I took Robbie Gould. I took Gould one spot out of Jefferson.
Okay, anyway, try to hang on to your rookie wide receivers. Now, this was a cool league because Dave freaking.
It is good that you held on to Paris Campbell.
Oh, he was on IR.
No. He was healthy when you dropped him. When you dropped Jefferson.
No, he got hurt in week 2.
I'm not sure if that's true.
Well, he wouldn't have been on your IR. He wasn't on IR by then.
He got hurt that week. So
Did you even start Peyton Barber?
I don't know. All right, listen. Dave absolutely crushed the draft, and he was the number 1 seed. He drafted Russell Wilson in round 6. He drafted Dalvin Cook and Nick Chubb and Chris Carson with his first 3 picks. You're going to see running back in the first 2 rounds. It was awful in this draft last year. It was just bust after bust after bust. But Dave managed to do well. I mean, Nick Chubb did miss some time, but Dave managed to do well with Cook and Chubb and Carson as his first 3 picks. Then DK Metcalf in round 4, Darren Waller in round 7. I mean, Dave absolutely crushed it. He was the number 1 seed, and he lost in the finals to Jamey.
Oh man, it was so heartbreaking.
He drafted Christian McCaffrey first overall. He drafted Tariq Cohen as his number 2 running back. He did draft J.K. Dobbins, Marlon Mack, Darrell Williams. I
drafted Cohen as my second running back.
Yeah, I'm almost positive. Yeah. I looked at your draft. You had a swing pick, obviously, so you went Cohen. You might have gone Cohen Dobbins back to back.
I did, yeah.
But you had, 1 pick can really make a season, and Jamey took Stephon Diggs with the first pick of round 5. 49.
I think he scored another touchdown just now.
So he had
16.
Hopkins and Diggs. He also had Mahomes. But
I think I snuck in as the 6th seed.
Yeah, there's no doubt Dave had a better draft than everyone. I mean, Dave had the number 1. He was great. He deserved to win. But Jamey won. And I compared the teams you drafted with the teams that you started in your fantasy playoffs, in your fantasy championship. And they were pretty similar. For Jamey, it was Mahomes, drafted and started. Dobbins was drafted as his number 3 running back, and he had Mike Davis, who was your backup to McCaffrey. And you started Diggs, Hopkins, and Marvin Jones, your first 3 wide.
If I remember this league correctly, I think I spent all my fab on Mike Davis because there were no running backs available. And I was like piecemealing that position together all season long.
I would have traded you Peyton Barber. All you had to do was ask. So your flex was Darnell Mooney. You won the championship with Darnell Mooney as your flex.
He won the championship with Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, and Cole Kmet was your tight end.
Yeah, Mike Davis, you spent 41 of your fab on.
Dave, you had like almost an identical lineup to what you drafted, except you had Cole Beasley in there.
Yeah, that was great.
You didn't draft him.
He couldn't catch a touchdown in week 16.
This is a PPR league, and it's 3 receivers and a flex. And Dave didn't draft a wide receiver until round 4. It was DK Metcalf. And then Marquise Brown was your number 2 receiver. So you kind of got by while Marquise Brown struggled. And then he was really good for you late in the year. CeeDee Lamb was your number 3 receiver. That was a great pick. But of course, the Dak injury set that one back. But you got there from Waller and Wilson for a while, and Cook and Chubb and Carson. So anyway, just wanted to set that scene for you. Yeah, Jamey took a lawnmower to Dave's team.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There are different ways to get to the championship, is I guess the point I'm making. But if we look at round 1, this is what I really wanted to focus on. Round 1 was awful. Well, okay, look at the running back. Look at rounds 1 and 2.
You say it was awful. I mean, it was injuries.
Yeah. But yes. Okay, McCaffrey, Barkley, first 2 picks. Kamara ended up as RB1. Ezekiel Elliott is the 4th pick, and he didn't really perform like that after the Dak injury. He was, I think, RB2 before, so it wasn't a bad pick. Michael Thomas, horrible pick. Dalvin.
I mean, again, horrible. It's injuries.
No, I'm not saying that the fantasy managers made a mistake. I'm just saying it ended up. It was injuries, but he also played 7 games, didn't catch a touchdown.
I mean, he had a high ankle sprain for the majority of the season, and then they put him.
I'm just saying it ended up being a bad pick.
No, you can't say horrible pick. Horrible result.
Horrible result. You know what I'm saying?
But isn't that like how it usually goes? Like let's count how many players that were taken in the first couple of rounds that just stayed healthy for the majority of the year and sucked.
I think this was unusually bad. McCaffrey, Barkley, Kamara, Zeke, Michael Thomas, Dalvin Cook, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
But those first 6 were basically the 6 that were being drafted in those spots anyway.
Absolutely. Again, they were the right picks. I'm just saying it didn't work out.
Right.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Derrick Henry, Miles.
Who took Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 7?
The guy who dropped Justin Jefferson. Devontae Adams.
But we would have all done it. We were all crazy for Edwards-Helaire last year.
Devontae Adams to Chris. Chris took 4 wide receivers with his first 4 picks. He took 1 wide receiver with each of his first 4 picks. He didn't have 16 wide receivers after round 4. Devontae Adams, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon. So a lot of injuries. Some players who just didn't play that well, like Mixon and Miles Sanders, I'd say, and Michael Thomas. Plus
Mixon was hurt.
Yeah, but he wasn't.
Yeah, but he was terrible until that Jacksonville game.
Round 2, Kelsey, Aaron Jones, good. Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill. It's pretty good round. Then look at this. Jacobs. He ended up as a top 10 running back. It was a weird season. Kenyon Drake to me. Good pick. Nick Chubb, George Kittle, DJ Moore, James Conner, Chris Godwin, Patrick Mahomes. Round 2 was actually pretty solid, I guess. Kenyon Drake, James Conner aside. Anyway, when you look at the running backs, a lot of them got hurt. Some of them were just bad. And Dave, you had the best team in the league, and you drafted 3 running backs with your first 3 picks. But were there any lessons gained from looking at these first 2 rounds and all the running backs that were busts, either mostly because of injury or in some cases just not playing well?
I mean, this doesn't cinch it, but my team is evidence that you can start your draft running back, and challenge for the championship. You have to get lucky like I did. I mean, Dalvin Cook didn't really get hurt. Nick Chubb did get hurt, but when he did play, he was awesome. Same thing with Chris Carson. Well, Carson wasn't awesome when he played. He was like awesome half the time when he played. But the whole premise of what I'm saying is you load up on running backs early. I think there's going to be a lot of fantasy managers that do that this coming year. And you can find guys to get by at wide receiver and other positions and still pick up some other running backs along the way, but you're getting those studs early on and you're crossing your fingers that they can stay healthy.
Jamey, I noticed that, going into 2020, I had been talking about this. I did some kind of ADP versus result research, and I saw that the first 2 rounds that we, from 2017, 18, 19, right? So this was during RB preview season. We as a fantasy community draft pretty well the running backs in rounds 1 and 2. Round 3 and 4 or 5.
The dead zone.
What's that?
The dead zone.
Yeah. It starts in round 3. And last year was like you had Gurley and Le'Veon Bell and these guys that nobody wanted, whatever. But I still have a huge fly in my room. So, but the last 2 years have been worse. And injuries have been a big part of that. But there have been some just outright busts that we didn't really have in 2017, 2018. Very few of them. 2019 and 20, I would say there have been some outright busts in the first couple of rounds. Do you think that you don't think this? I know, because you love going with 3 running backs to start. But do you think that we should pull it back and cool off on the running backs a little bit?
I only do it when I get 3 of my top 15 guys. So, it depends on who's there in the third round. But I think, if you're looking at it, and part of this I don't think gets fully discussed, is that, we say the running backs in rounds 3, 4, and 5. The reason for that is that people panic a little bit because of all the running backs that typically go in the first 2 rounds. And so when you get past the top 12 guys, there's a reason why they're ranked in the top 12, because they're expected to perform at a certain level compared to the guys that are ranked 13 through 24. A lot of those guys are typically, oh, this guy's going to get volume, or this guy's in a good situation, or this is a young player that's expected to take a step forward. And sometimes they don't. And so, when you're looking at these guys, like Dave hit on one in particular, and it's the only, or there were 2 running backs I'm looking at round 3 that were drafted in the 3rd round of this particular draft. It's a half PPR draft, and you said we start 3 receivers. Chris Carson and Todd Gurley. And you know how that worked out. Carson, younger player in an offense that still ran the ball significantly enough and performed well when healthy. Gurley, young enough, but obviously we know what his situation has been, and he changed teams and he struggled. Then you get to round 4. I mean, these are the names we're talking about here. Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor were the only 2 running backs in that round. And again, you know how that worked out. Gordon, when he was by himself, was good. Taylor, young player, took time to eventually become the player that he is now. And so these are the names that we're talking about here, And then you get to round 5, it's Kareem Hunt, David Johnson, and Antonio Gibson, Raheem Mostert. Again, mixed bag. So, I think you just have to take into account what happens in the first 2 rounds and why are these running backs. So we're not talking about 12 running backs going over 3 rounds. We just named 7 guys. Okay, there's a reason why these 7 guys are going in these spots. So yes, it's a dead zone for that position. But again, you got to factor in what happens in the first 2 rounds. And again, what happened in the first 2 rounds, why the guys fail? For the most part, it was injury. It wasn't really poor performance. You mentioned a few. Miles Sanders stands out. Joe Mixon, if you want to say he stands out, but he missed the majority of the season. So who knows how he would have finished. So it's really injury with those guys in the first couple of rounds. If those guys hit, you're going to be in a pretty good spot, even if you do take a guy in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. But again, we're not talking about a plethora of guys in those spots.
Yeah, and Kenyon Drake and James Conner, I wanted to highlight too. I think they were pretty bad. Look, Conner actually got off to a really good start, and then they just stopped giving him the ball. And Drake, I guess he had a decent finish, but they weren't
scored a lot of touchdowns.
They weren't really 2nd round picks. And Kenyon Drake stopped catching the ball, which I don't think we really anticipated.
And I think for the guys that are going to be drafted, in terms of learning a lesson, the guys who are going to be drafted in the first couple of rounds of this year's draft, the majority of the ones that I think you have concerns about, whether you do or you don't, but I think you should, is the 2nd-year guys, just because there's not a huge sample size. And right. So Akers, what are we going off of? 5 games at the end of the season where 3 of those, the backup didn't play at all and he had all the work. Swift, we know about everything that's going on with him. Dobbins, there's other mouths to feed, as the offense coordinator just said. We're going to use all our guys. Edwards-Helaire, we saw what happened with him. It goes on and on and on. It's not necessarily just the Mixons and the Chubbs of the world. I know Chris called him a bust, but guys like that. It's the 2nd-year guys, I think, that are going to be pushed up the ladder maybe too soon, and those are the ones that could fail if they do.
Yeah. And then I think the best picks, some of the best picks we saw in this draft were the round 4 receivers. AJ Brown, but these 3 in particular are year 2 guys. They were year 2 guys. AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf all went in round 4. And so did Tyler Lockett. So did Adam Thielen and Amari Cooper. Cooper, was on his way to a good year. This could have been a really good round for wide receivers, except toward the end we had Sutton. He got hurt. T.Y. Hilton, which was not a pick we would have made. Somebody else did in this draft. And DJ Chark was the last pick of the round. But Dave, do you see round 4, which looked like it was going to be, coming in, we thought round 3 and 4 are going to be great wide receiver rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Get your wide receivers there. And even round 5, I think we were saying, do you see something similar this year?
Yes.
Players like McLaurin and Metcalf and AJ Brown that could become elite. Well, McLaurin, I can't say was elite because he only had I think 4 touchdown catches, but you know what I mean.
Well, he might become elite this year now that he's got what I would call an upgrade at quarterback to Ryan Fitzpatrick. Jamie's talked about how much he loves Terry McLaurin. I would imagine that he would be totally comfortable taking him by round 3, but
he's going to get to round 4. That's my point. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
I think you're going to see, like I said earlier, you're going to see a lot of people target running backs early on. I would imagine that maybe 3 or 4 managers will either get 3 running backs with their first 3 picks or 2 running backs and a tight end over their first 3 picks, and they're going to wait to go after wide receivers. I don't think you're going to see a lot of fantasy managers go 0 RB, maybe 1 in every draft. You might see 1.
It's going to be modified 0 RB.
That's what I would hope so. Right.
That's the new trend for everybody.
Solo RB. Get 1 running back early on, and then you can go get some other wide receivers. You'll see maybe 3 or 4 managers in the draft get 1 running back and a couple of wide receivers through the first 3 rounds, and then they'll pick through what's left at running back in rounds 4 and 5. But I think that's going to be the perfect time to go after some wide receivers, is in rounds 3 if you don't like a running back, but definitely rounds 4 and 5. You will find names that you will be very happy with starting.
So just looking at one of our most recent drafts that we've done already, our mock draft. And again, the draft we're referencing was done closer to the season last year. This draft was done that I'm referencing now following the NFL draft. So within the last month or so. So the receivers started to go off the board here in round 3. And these are the guys that went in round 3. Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Julio Jones, again, pre-trade, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson, and that was the list. Then round 4, it was Robert Woods. This is a PPR draft, comparing it to half PPR, so take that into account as well. Robert Woods, Amari Cooper, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Adam Thielen, CD Lamb, Tyler Lockett. So it's a very similar pattern.
Right. But I want to point out a key difference here. Last year, the 3 players I mentioned were rookies. This year, the round 4 wide receivers seem to be bounce back candidates. Guys that like a Cooper, like, I don't know if Cooper Kupp will get there, but I guess I can't really call Robert Woods a bounce back candidate. He had
a pretty good year.
But the guys you're talking about, Amari Cooper is a bounce back candidate.
You're talking about guys that
Godwin, Evans, DJ Moore.
DJ Moore is a bounce back candidate. CD Lamb, I guess you could put in that category.
Lamb would be the one. Right. Lamb would be the one that would be more in
the second year player. Right.
Mold. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know how we feel about that. Does that change anything? That you're getting guys that are kind of coming off disappointing seasons.
But really, the rookies from a year ago that are going to get drafted high, obviously Jefferson's going to be, depending on who you're drafting with, whatever. He's most likely a round 2 pick, but could be a round 1 pick, depending on how people get so excited about him. That's really the one that's going to be the highest. Then you get CD Lamb is typically the second guy off the board. If you want to put Jamar Chase in the conversation too, just talking about young receivers, but Deontay Johnson, well, no, he's not a second guy.
He's not right. But Claypool is.
It's Ayuk and Higgins are in the next wave. Claypool's in the next wave. That there's not a lot of guys that are going to get drafted to the same level. Jefferson's just on a different plane.
Yeah, the more we talk about it, I really do like RB. I really do like at least being open to taking 3 running backs to start the draft, because
it's got to be the right 3 though. That's the thing.
Yeah, right. Being open.
When I was doing it early, I was doing it when I was getting Antonio Gibson, and he was the one as my 3rd guy. Sometimes I think I did it with Dobbins as my 3rd guy. You got to get the right 3. And that's going into the process. Like, you're not taking Chris Carson in the 3rd round. At least you shouldn't. David Montgomery's borderline guy. Don't take Josh Jacobs in the 3rd round. Don't reach for Myles Gaskin in the 3rd round. It's got to be 3 guys that you're sold on. For me, it's 3 guys that I'm sold on.
So where's the cutoff then? At least in your mind right now. Like, does Montgomery make the cut?
Not for me, no. It's typically around my 15th running back, because I look at the receivers that are on the board still, and they're just stars. They're absolute stars when you get to the 3rd round.
I know. But Montgomery, I don't think Montgomery is going to be a top 5 running back or whatever he finished as last year. He was awesome, but I think he'll still be good. No, would it surprise you if he finished as RB12?
No, but I don't want to draft RB12. I want to draft RB10 or higher.
If the difference is 2 spots between RB12 and RB10, I'm okay taking that as my 3rd running back. I don't want that. Okay, so I'm okay with Montgomery as my 3rd. What about Miles Sanders? Right here, right now, would you take him?
Yes,
in round 3. I would.
Well, you know what? No, this was a month ago or 2 months ago. Yes. Now, no. I'd rather take a receiver over Miles Sanders.
Okay, and you already said Carson and Jacobs. I agree with you on that. I don't know if there's really anybody else that I would consider to be on the fence. I wouldn't consider ETN to be that worth a round 3 pick.
Carson's not.
Not for me. I'm worried about a letdown for Carson this year.
Jamey, is Carson in your 15?
No.
And my list is actually
again, this is the draft. Now again, fluky, obviously, but this was the draft where I took the one I pulled up is where I took Najee Harris in the 3rd round. So this is the example. Just 3 guys in the top 15. Forget the name. Antonio Gibson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the 2 running backs, went right before him, and McLaurin. So the 4 picks were Gibson, Edwards-Helaire, McLaurin, Harris. Take out McLaurin, put Harris in a different spot. If it was Gibson or Edwards-Helaire, that's what I'm doing. So I took Eckler in round 1. This is PPR. Chubb in round 2. If you tell me I get Gibson, Edwards-Helaire, or Najee Harris in round 3, and again, you want to throw Harris out of there.
You're doing that every time.
The next running back after Harris is Chris Carson. There was my cutoff.
Okay, and so who are your wide receivers?
My wide receivers. So in round 4, it's almost been a very similar path. I take Amari Cooper in the 4th round almost every time. Yeah. So Cooper in round 4.
No problem.
Round 5, I took Hawkinson. So round 6, I took Sutton. And round 7, I took another running back, Michael Carter. And then Jalen Waddle was my 3rd receiver. So
do you think Amari Cooper has DK Metcalf, AJ Brown potential like last year? Top 10 per game?
Just behind.
I'm trying to figure out who in round 4, and this is a slightly different discussion than the lessons learned, but I'm trying to figure out who in that group of veteran guys, Godwin, Evans, Cooper, Allen Robinson, who's got the potential to win you your league? I struggle with that. Robert Woods, Cooper.
You have to put Cooper in this list, though, because in those first 4 games with Dak and this newfangled offense he's in, sharing the field with Gallup and Lamb, he averaged 21 PPR points per game in those first 4 games. Now, I don't know if he's
he's
gonna be good. Yeah,
he's
and I think a lot of people are ready to just kind of overlook Amari Cooper because last year wasn't amazing. They forget about those first 4 games. They forget about how he was in 2019, and I don't think you can do that. I think he's got some. I think he can be really good. I think he's worth a pick in the top 50.
For sure. I think it's just a matter of, to Adam's point, can he get to the level of what those other guys' ceilings could be? I don't know if that's going to be the case over the course of the season. If Lamb is as good as he potentially be, that's the problem. Because if CD Lamb is the guy, and he could easily be the guy in that offense, then it's going to be hard. And, let's factor in they're going to have their starting tight end back as well. So there's a lot of mouths to feed on this team.
Yeah, I'm not going to throw 50 times a game like they did. But Amari Cooper was, in full PPR, he was wide receiver 7 in non, and in full, he was wide receiver 10 in 2019. And that was with Dak Prescott throwing for about 4,900 yards, and I don't remember how many touchdowns.
But no Lamb.
But no CD Lamb. That's of course true. He threw for 30 touchdowns that year and 4,900 yards. And
Cooper, to me, if you go heavy running back or non-wide receivers early, and he's sitting there in round 4, he's perfect. This, like I said, the way that I've been drafting a lot early with these receivers, and I'm not going to do this in August because it's not going to work out this way with this. with the running back. The way that it's just not going to play out the same way. But if I get Cooper as my second receiver in round 4, if I go receiver 3 and 4, I'm thrilled with that. Absolutely thrilled with that. Or if I take a tight end in the first 3 rounds or quarterback in the first 3 rounds, which is rare, I would love to have Amari Cooper as my number 1 or number 2 receiver. And in this case, he was my number 1, and I'm fine with it.
And I said Robert Woods bouncing back, but I stand by that actually because he didn't even have 1,000 yards. He had 936 yards. He did have 155 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. But as a receiver, for Robert Woods to play 16 games and have 936 yards, yeah, that's not good. That's alarming to me.
It's just kind of a gray area to call him a bounce back candidate because it wasn't like he stunk.
He was wide receiver 13, but the rushing totals had a huge impact on that.
I don't know. Like I said, I just don't want to call him a bounce back. It's just
yeah, that's fine. But I think, yeah, but at the same time, I don't know that I could possibly see Robert Woods having like a 1,300 yard, 10 touchdown season or anything like that, even in 17 games.
I could.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Because of Stafford?
Because of Stafford and the way that this offense figures to probably take a few more chances pushing the ball downfield. And I know that they've got Deshaun Jackson to do that, but he's not going to be available for 17 weeks, and he's going to be a part-time player. And Cooper Kupp isn't as much of a downfield threat as Robert Woods can be. The Rams have told us that they love Robert Woods' athleticism just by how they use him on running plays. And he's capable of being at least an intermediate threat, 10-plus yards downfield. And Stafford is a huge upgrade at quarterback. So I could absolutely see Robert Woods having a career year.
He's got 115 or more rushing yards 3 straight seasons, so we should not be overlooking that. All right, I guess you guys feel like there is similar upside in round 4 at wide receiver as what we had last year.
More so.
More so. Okay.
I don't know about more so. There's going to be a lot of good receivers that fall in there, especially names that you recognize and guys that have had a track record of success along with other younger receivers. And that'll bleed into round 5 as well.
Okay. So
the real mission is going to be for us to start finding running backs that we would be comfortable taking in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7. And there are names that we'd be happy to take in that range, but I just think that I would prefer a lot of quarterbacks and wide receivers in that range more.
You know what I'd like to do? Jamey, do you know, or Dave, do you guys know the 6 teams that made the playoffs? I know you two, Heath and Chris. George was 5.
Yeah, I have the last week of the season in front of me.
Okay, so Dave had Darren Waller.
Dave was the 1 seed at 10-3. George Maselli was 9-4. Chris Towers was 8-5. Then there was a 3-way tie. I think by points, I was the 4 seed. So it was, I don't remember what the tiebreakers were, so I can't tell you who played who in the playoffs based on the tiebreakers. But I was 7-6. Ben Trager was 7-6. And Heath Cummings was 7-6. You just missed out at 6-7.
Yeah, that's the story of my season. So Dave had Darren Waller. George.
So it did work out that way. I was the 4. I played Ben. And Heath was the 5. He played Chris.
All right. I just want to see what the tight end situations were. So Dave, great team. Darren Waller, number 1 seed. George, number 2 seed. He drafted Tyler Higbee in round 6, and he started Jared Cook. The 3 seed was who? Chris?
It was Chris.
Okay. Chris, in the playoffs, he started Evan Ingram, and that is who he drafted. Actually, I did want to look at Chris's team a little bit more closely because he started with 4 wide receivers. Jamey drafted 2 dud tight ends.
Hayden Hurst was 1, I know.
Hayden Hurst and Chris Herndon. And you started Cole Kmet in the championship. Heath started Hunter Henry in the championship. I don't know.
I beat Dave.
Oh, my gosh.
Because Stephon Diggs scored 28 touchdowns.
He did draft Hunter Henry.
Against the Patriots.
So who drafted Kelsey?
Will Brinson.
Will Brinson.
Pick 13 overall.
Mixon, Kelsey, Beckham, A.J. Brown, Fuller, Le'Veon Bell, Breida, Singletary. Yeah, I guess I don't know. He probably had a decent team. Matt Ryan, Henry Ruggs.
He tied you at 6 and 7. He actually, I think, had more points than you.
Yeah. Okay. So this is just one draft, but tight end didn't matter that much. It did for Dave. I mean, he had the number 1 seed, and Waller was a big part of it. But it looks like the other 5 teams in the playoffs were not special at tight end. Does that matter to you guys?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that I had Zach Ertz, who I obviously picked up off waivers, so I don't know at what point I started him down the stretch, but I was obviously mixing and matching myself throughout the course of the season.
Did you hate doing it? Was it a pain in the ass?
I mean, I'm sure at some point I had a good stretch of play from somebody. I don't think I was doing it every week.
Like, I think that's the first thing you've got to think about when you consider drafting a tight end early is, do you just want to lock up the position, have an advantage over the rest of your league? It sounds great on the surface, but it's going to cost you a good player at another position to do it. I think this year more than any year, I really don't mind doing it with one of those first 3 tight ends, partially because I don't know if there are a lot of other tight ends that I'd be comfortable saying, okay, this is my guy until further notice.
Yeah, I mean, I would do it with Hawkinson. I would do it with Pitts. I would do it with
but Pitts has to be one of those guys that you can't commit to him for the whole year. If he gets off to a nice cold start, you're going to start looking around at other tight ends.
Well, I mean, and again, you know, my team's an example of that because I liked Hayden Hurst's situation a lot last year, and I took him in round 9, and he didn't perform very well.
Right, and this year you're going to pick much earlier than round 9 to get Pitts.
I'm sure I started Hurst the majority of the season last year.
Well, look, you got what you get. You got 2 catches for 18 yards from Cole Kmet in the championship, Jamey. So.
And you won. No complaining.
Hardware. All right. Chris Towers.
You want to talk about his team because he didn't take any running backs.
Yeah, and he finished. I'm sorry. He finished as the 3 seed.
He was the 3 seed. Yes.
Okay. Where's his stupid team? I didn't write it down. There it is. He took Devontae Adams, Julio Jones, Mike Evans, and Terry McLaurin with his first 4 picks.
That's sexy.
Hey, but
gotta admit, that's sexy.
No, but the truth is, like, Jones missed half the season. Evans was up and down. McLaurin was like wide receiver 20. You know, if that had been DK Metcalf, which it could have been, that would have been a much better pick. Not obviously, we all make pick. I'm not criticizing Chris. I'm just saying that really wasn't as good as it sounds in our minds. You know, Terry McLaurin.
Those first 6 were really good though.
What's that?
His first 6 picks were really good.
Well, Deshaun Watson was in round 6, and Antonio Gibson was in round 5. Those are great. He took Ronald Jones. His other running backs were bad. Evan Ingram was his tight end. So Watson, Gibson. Yeah, I mean, this good for him. It worked out. Adams, Julio, Evans, McLaurin, and he was able to pull it off. I'm sure.
And the team that he started in the playoffs, he also had Chase Claypool at some point.
Okay.
So the team that he started in the playoffs was Watson, Ronald Jones, Nyheim Hines, Evans, Adams, McLaurin, Ingram, Claypool. And he had Gibson hurt at the end of the season and Julio hurt at the end of the season. So how do you have those 2 guys in the playoffs? Who knows?
Yeah. So who were the 2 running backs he started? Hines and
Ronald Jones and Nyheim Hines.
He drafted both of them. He held on to them all year.
All right, we're going to take a break here. And when we come back, we got some more notes from around the NFL. We'll finish with that. Be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Got to tell you about CBS Sports HQ real quick here. This week, you can start your morning every week, 8 a.m. Eastern with Morning Buzz. It's an hour of highlights, news, and all the day's need to know. And leave us on all day, but make sure you come back at least for 6 p.m. When we've got everything that you need to know basically for the night ahead. We got the handicappers, the best ones in the world, telling you which picks, which bets to make. How to watch HQ, it's very easy. Go to your Roku, your Apple TV, Fire TV, most connected TVs. Look for the CBS Sports app, fire it up, check out HQ. That's the only 24/7 free sports streaming network. Okay, news and notes. Actually had some stuff over the weekend that wasn't Julio Jones. Greg Roman, Baltimore's offensive coordinator, he's pretty outspoken. He says RBBC a lot, but he said they're going to use all their running backs, including Justice Hill. And he also said he wants more downfield passing this season. So what do you make of that for the Ravens, Dave?
I also believe he said like something along the effect of, at the end of the day, we're still going to be a running team. We can't just give up on that. So I don't know exactly what it means. I think the Ravens want to be a more efficient passing team. You look at how they've self-destructed in the playoffs the past couple of seasons, that they need to be better at throwing the football. They're addressing it with receivers that are, in the case of Sammy Watkins, a savvy veteran. In the case of Rashad Bateman, a good outside presence. You know what I was thinking about was we were kind of in love with the idea of Allen Robinson potentially going to Baltimore at one point during the offseason. And I was fine. Maybe you weren't, but I was interested in how that would work and how that would look, because then it would force defenses to pay attention to Allen Robinson. It would open things up and it would give them a big target, a big outside rangy target. And I wonder if that's what they're hoping Bateman eventually evolves into, is somebody who could be, a good contested catch guy that can catch 12 to 18-yard passes down the sideline or, on a post route, something like that. And maybe in time he will, but this isn't a team that I still expect to all of a sudden throw the ball 575 times. They're still going to run the ball a lot. Why wouldn't they? So I don't know. The other thing they mentioned in the article is that he thinks that J.K. Dobbins can be a good pass catcher. I'll believe that when I see it in terms. I think he could do it. The volume of targets necessary for Dobbins to be great for fantasy, I'll believe that when I see it. I don't think he's going to come near 50 catches.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm working on a Twitter poll. And it says,
thanks for listening.
I was listening. I can do both. Last season, I dropped Justin Jefferson after week 2 for a running back. Which running back do you think that was? Mike Davis, Myles Gaskin, Nyheim Hines, or Peyton Barber?
Everybody's going to know the answer to that.
You think so?
Yes.
I don't know.
Because it's you.
I don't think you're going to get 14,000 votes on that poll.
Let's see. Okay.
What else we got?
Cam Newton hurt his hand. Anyone care?
Not yet.
All right. They don't know us boo when it comes to an injury report, but if training camp opens and he's on the PUP list with a hand injury, then that would be bad.
Yeah, I don't care. Jamison Crowder, not at OTAs. Jets are trying to make him take a pay cut. And
he's going to be on a different team.
Now they talk about like he's going to be on the Jets, but you don't think so?
He doesn't have to take the pay cut. He can look at the Jets salary cap situation and say, you can afford to pay me triple what you owe me. So no, I'm not going to take a pay cut. And so they're going to have to decide at some point whether or not he's worth the money. They don't have to do it yet. They can go through training camp and all that first if they really wanted, just to see if they need him. Corey Davis is banged up already. So maybe they think that they do need him at some point, but my guess is that he'll be on a different team.
Also, how many 100-yard games for Julio Jones since 2011?
Since 2011?
Mm-hmm.
20.
No.
40?
31.
58.
Oh,
how many 100-yard games from every single Tennessee Titans player combined? 100-yard receiving games from all the Titans over that same span.
26.
12.
Half as many.
12.
50.
What?
Oh, okay.
How many times last year did two Titans wide receivers have 70 or more yards in the same game?
3.
Once.
Twice in the middle.
Huh.
Mekhi Becton, left tackle for the Jets. He's got plantar fasciitis, and he's apparently a little overweight. Needs to improve his conditioning.
I've been there, man.
Minnesota. That plantar fasciitis, Dave. Minnesota signed Rashad Breeland.
That too.
And Jamey, DJ Chark, he added some muscle. Urban Meyer says he wants him to play bigger. It was like, boy, that sounds like something a college coach would say about a college wide receiver, but I am a little biased, I think.
I plan to draft DJ Chark ahead of Stephon Diggs like I did in that other league ago.
You usually don't like when at least running backs put on muscle.
No, not good.
For Chark?
I mean, I don't think it's going to kill him, but it's just really bad for backs, more so than receivers.
If it slows him down, it's bad.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And we shouldn't skip over the Breeland news either. Minnesota's building a pretty decent secondary. They're building a pretty good defense. This is a bounce back defense for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, when they're playing against Jordan Love, they should win the division.
Don't forget about Jared Goff and Andy Dalton.
Dear Lord, that is a horrible division of quarterbacks if Aaron Rodgers is
Well,
You think?
Fields will end up playing ahead of Dalton. I don't know if it'll happen week 1, but it'll happen at some point. That'll make it a little bit harder on the Vikings. But that's a team that could win their division. We talked about who would win the AFC South.
It's a fun show. It's good stuff.
That's why people listen.
I enjoyed it.
We help people out, man.
Conversation. We try.
How's our mock draft going to look Tuesday night?
Lots of running backs early.
Yeah, I guess so. It's going to be.
We got some surprise guests.
Can you please make sure I don't have like the 11th pick every time we do?
I could please. Yes, I'll talk to the random draft.
Well, if you see
program.
that I get picks 10 through 12, do it again.
No,
that's not fair.
I can't learn anything, Dave, if I'm always drafting.
All right. So I'll
I think
trade
the last
you.
time you had a pick like 7, you screwed up the entire draft. You didn't know what pick you were. You didn't know what pick we were on.
If I'm not picking in the top 6, I'll trade. If I've got 7, 8, 9, I'll trade you that if you get 10, 11, 12.
Fine. Deal. That's Dave and Jamey. I'm Adam. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football Today.
Just to quit your complaining.